Good afternoon, everybody. We're now officially at noon, and we have full audio-visual setup. So, thank you very much to the Solvang City employees who helped us figure that out. But thank you for coming out today. My name is Daniel Phillips, and I am with National Demographics Corporation, and I will be walking you through this presentation, which is our last presentation before we have our official census data in. So this will be our last pre-draft map public hearing. And so what we're going to do first is brief introductions for the commissioners who are present, and then we'll get into the presentation, and then we'll have time for question and answer and public discussion. So like I said, I'm Daniel Phillips, and I actually live in Santa Barbara, so I'm very familiar with the area, and look forward to being involved in this process and walking you through it. And we have here Commissioner Bradley.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Doug Bradley. I'm one of your 2 District 3 commissioners, and it's really good to come home today. I lived here for 17 years, and I don't come to Solvang as often as I would like these days, but I'm really glad to be back. And I'm anxious to hear your proposed maps today and what your thoughts are on communities of interest and where you want to see those district lines be drawn.
Thank you. Next, we have our newest commissioner, Michael Hartman.
Hi, I'm Mike Hartman. I'm from the 5th district, but you know, even though we're from certain districts, we're representing everybody. So you know, it's not just, oh, I don't necessarily want to hear what the people in the 3rd district want to say or people in the 1st district. I want to hear what everyone in Santa Barbara County wants to say, because we're going to take all voices and opinions into our consideration as we look over the maps that you guys provide, and we're really excited to hear what you have to say today. I am not.
That's a good question. I'm Kevin Kasef. I am the 2nd District 3 Commissioner, and I'd like to thank everybody for coming out and showing your support. And hope any questions now or after. There's ways to email, there's any kind of resources, and we look forward to a lot of participation. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, and I think we have a couple of commissioners in the audience.
Sitting in the audience. Hi, I'm Karen Twibell, and I'm from District 1, but my parents have lived on the outskirts of Solvang for 25 years. And there he is.
I'm sorry. Hi, I'm Jim Bray. I represent District 4, and I'm up in Orcutt. So we're going around, is that what?
I think that is it for our commissioners present today. So I will now be leading you through a presentation that we've prepared. Now, you might have seen this before because we've shown the same presentation at our previous workshops, but if this is your first workshop, then it will be new material. But just as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We have a nice man from our outreach firm, Pepe Smith, filming us in the back. And we have these microphones that allow us to be picked up by the recording. So when you are speaking later on, please use one of the microphones and speak into it. So like I said, this is our last workshop and our last meeting for quite some time. The next one will be October 6th, which will be a normal business meeting. And that will be held at the Betteravia Hearing Room in Santa Maria. And that's going to be the first meeting after the census data is released. And so it will be a debrief about the data that have come in. And then the following meeting will be November the 3rd in the same location.
Daniel, I have a question. Can I use that? This is for you. I had 2 or 3 people approach me this last week and say they did not know about this particular meeting. I told them about it and I sent the flyer. Can you go over exactly, I know that I saw it on Facebook. How else are people being notified? Is it in the paper? Is it the email blast? That kind of stuff. That would be helpful to know.
Yes, so to the best of my knowledge, there's the county sends out notifications to the people who are signed up on the email list. And then there was something that went out to the papers at the beginning of the process saying these are the dates and times and locations that will have all the pre-draft map hearings. And then on our website, we put up a schedule that shows where all the meetings are happening and when they're happening. And so that is the extent that I'm aware of, but there might be more that I'm not aware of. I'm not on the outreach side of things, but that's what I know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I'm happy to see how, all the people here today, and so the word is getting out. Now, today's goal is for you to learn from the experts and the experts to listen to you. There's going to be a mapping tools training for those of you who may not be familiar with the tools we have available. And we want you to leave empowered to give effective feedback, either in the form of actually drawing maps or just giving written testimony. So every 10 years, the county has to redistrict based on the most recent census data. And this is to account for population changes over the decade. And these are going to determine which community members are placed in each supervisorial district. And voters within each district will elect one of their own as county supervisor. And you should get involved because sharing your unique point of view will help ensure that our diverse communities are fairly represented. So what does redistricting look like? We have community input through public hearings like this, and workshops like this, and through the public mapping tools. There's also ways that we would analyze the most recent census data and give you the chance, once we come out with the first maps, for you to review it and give your feedback on them. So who draws the lines? Really, we want all of the residents of Santa Barbara County to feel that they are welcome to draw and submit maps of their own. And so there are different tools that we have for these purposes, and different tools for different levels of technical skill and interest. Now, the commissioners, they have agreed that they will refrain from drawing their own maps, and they will be tasked with just choosing among the maps that the public comes up with. And so that is their express task, as Measure G lays out. It's an independent commission that is made up of citizens of the county that don't have any elected office. And the idea here is that rather than having the supervisors choose their own lines, a independent commission is the one that decides that. So this is the list of all the commissioners that we have. And it has our newest commissioner, Michael Hartman, as well as those who are not present today, but it's a full commission of 11 members. So we want to engage residents through extensive public outreach, 7 hearings before drawing the maps. Like I said, this is the last of those 7. We've had 1 in each of the existing supervisorial districts, so this is considered the District 3 hearing. So residents would define their local communities of interest and draw initial draft maps, and then we'll have 7 hearings at the back end to gather feedback on the draft maps that come in. The deadline for the final district map will be December the 15th. Now, there are several criteria that have to be followed by the commission when deciding which of the maps to approve. The first is federal law, the first being that the districts should be equal in population. There is some wiggle room. They don't have to be exactly equal, but pretty close to equal. And then to not do what is called racial gerrymandering, where you make race or ethnicity the only or main factor when drawing the lines. However, you do want to have race or ethnicity as a consideration in order to follow the Federal Voting Rights Act, which says that you can't dilute the voting strength of a historically marginalized or discriminated against minority group. Then we have the state law, which also includes the Measure G requirements, so they kind of meld together. But you see here, it's a numbered list, meaning that it's an order of priority. So if you can't satisfy all 7, then you prioritize the higher ones. The very first one is to follow the California Voting Rights Act, which essentially just says have single member districts, which is already the case. The second of which is to have contiguous districts so that the districts are just one piece. They're not disconnected pieces. Third is to not divide neighborhoods and what are considered communities of interest. And I'll talk about what those are a little later. A fourth is to not divide cities and census designated places. So cities are incorporated cities like Solvang, Buellton, Santa Barbara, but census designated places are those that aren't incorporated but are still recognized as communities, like Los Olivos and Ballard and Santa Ynez. So that's criteria number 4. Number 5 is to draw lines that follow easily identifiable boundaries. So, for example, major roads, highways, railroads, the crests of mountain ranges, rivers, things that already exist in the landscape. 6 is to draw districts that are compact in that they do not bypass one group of people to get to a more distant group of people. And finally, the districts should have some sort of topographical and geographical cohesiveness to them. So those are the requirements. This third block are other traditional principles that are not required but may be considered. The first of those is future population growth. If there's a major housing development on the horizon and you know that's going to add a lot of people in the next 10 years, you can intentionally underpopulate a certain district while not straying too far from the equal population principle. And so you can kind of account for the growth that's going to happen to a certain extent. And lastly, minimize voters shifted to different election years so that there isn't a large gap between when they last voted and when they next vote. At the very bottom, you see there's a prohibition from considering the residence of any incumbent or political candidate, and districts shall not be drawn for purposes of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent political candidate or political party. So a purely nonpartisan process. This is the demographic summary of the existing districts. So you see that the total population that we estimate in 2020 is 446,503. Now this is an estimate because we don't have the official census data in quite yet, but this is our best guess and we are pretty confident that number is going to be very close to the official number. And you can see how much the population in each district deviates from the ideal. The ideal would just be taking that 446 number and dividing by 5. And as things stand now, assuming our estimates are largely correct, District 3 is the most overpopulated district. It has almost 6,000 more people than the ideal. While on the flip side, District 1 is the most underpopulated. It has almost 5,000 too few people. So these will have to be, the lines will have to be adjusted just to get population balance. This total deviation of 12% needs to be lower than 10% in order to be presumptively constitutional. Then we have these rows that show citizen voting age population. And you can see that we're just looking at those who are eligible to vote because the courts had decreed that when it comes to following the Federal Voting Rights Act, that's the key data point. And so just looking at that group of people, we have a racial ethnic breakdown. And you see that in some districts, there are greater percentages of Hispanics who are eligible to vote, such as District 5, while in other districts, the percentages are lower. And just a reminder that this is the citizen voting age population data is official and up to date. What is still unofficial and estimated are the total population numbers. And we're hoping that they will be very close to, the official numbers will be very close to our estimates. So to return to this concept of a community of interest, the law actually defines it explicitly as a contiguous population that shares common social and economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. So how do you define your community? You can define it as something like a neighborhood or maybe something larger like a town. Perhaps it's around a park or a school or some other definition. We'd like to hear what the community's geographic borders are so that we can make sure that we keep the whole community of interest undivided. We also want to hear what shared issues, concerns, and our demographics tie the community together and how that community is impacted by county policy decisions. Basically, we want to hear your community story. So you can participate by either describing your community, by sending in a written or giving a verbal comment today, drawing your community on a map, and I'll show you how to do that a little later on, and providing your input directly to the commission. We have commissioners here, you can tell them what you think your community looks like. So if you want to learn more, please visit our website, drawsantabarbaracounty.org, and I'll show you the website. Participate in meetings, which you're already doing. For contact information for community groups, we should contact and urge them to contact us. And you can send any comments or questions to redistricting@countyofsb.org. And here we have on the website, there is a list of groups we are contacting. But if you think there's a group that we've missed, please go to the website and you'll see where that group is, and you can add a group to that list. So this takes us to the question and answer time. And now's your time to ask questions of me or the commissioners about the process. And so what we have here are, we have microphones at the podium. And so I will come around and hand a microphone to someone who would like to speak. And so just raise your hand. And when I come to you, please state your name and speak directly into the microphone so that your question or comment is recorded. So does anyone have any questions?
I have a comment, not a question.
That's fine.
That's fine. I'd like to read this if I could.
Could you please speak into the microphone? And give your name, please?
Okay, my name is Ron Rogers. I live in Buellton. Been a registered voter since 1988. I'm here to speak at the prompting
I'm
of...
sorry, sir. Do you mind holding the microphone close to your mouth so
Okay,
we can
I'm
pick you
sorry.
up? Thank you.
I can't breathe. I'm here to speak at the prompting of Mayor Holly Sierra. She cannot attend today. I'm certainly not speaking on her behalf, but she is aware of my position concerning redistricting. I'm not sure when District 3 boundaries were set, but my wife and I have voted in this county since 1988. As I recall, Buellton and San Ynez Valley were hooked into Isla Vista way back then. It made no logical sense then, and it makes no logical sense now. Myself and my neighbors have absolutely nothing in common with predominantly college crowd at Isla Vista. I even question why temporary students should even have a voice in county matters. They don't have to live with the consequences of their votes. Although in one of my former lives, I was a map maker, cartographer, I do not have the skills to make a politically balanced county map. But I'm urging the folks that have these skills to connect the San Ynez Valley to parts of Lompoc, possibly Vandenberg Village, which is only about 16 miles away. We are far more physically and politically connected to that area than we are to the 40-plus miles away in the Goleta, Isla Vista area. We shop at Lompoc local stores, including Home Depot, Petco, and Walmart. I would guess the majority of the Isla Vista group don't even know where San Ynez Valley is or what the population looks like. I would also guess a majority of our neighbors in our valley don't even know where Isla Vista is or what that population looks like. Please release us from Isla Vista. Those people have no concerns about the San Ynez Valley, and we have no concerns with the university group.
Thank you, sir. Just before I take the next question or comment, I noticed we had a couple of commissioners come in, and I just want you to have the chance to introduce yourselves to the audience.
Hello, thank you for being here. I'm Cheryl Trotsky, District 1.
Hi everyone, my name is Amanda Ochoa and I represent District 4.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question or comment? Yes?
First, thank you. My name is Lansing Duncan, and thank you for bringing this here because it's an important issue for everybody in the county and certainly just as much for residents of the San Ynez Valley. One is a question, and that is, are you starting from scratch as though there were no district lines drawn, or are you looking at readjustment? Because there's conceivably an argument to be made for keeping people in the district that they're used to being in as compared to moving them so that you don't get the sort of situation people have when you go to vote and you don't know where your polling place is, or if you want to express yourself and you don't know who your supervisor is. So that's one thing. Another thing.
Can I answer your first question?
Please.
Okay. So it really is up to you, the map drawers, and we encourage the public to be the map drawers. You to submit your own maps, and you can decide for yourself. Do you want to modify the existing map and stay pretty close to how it is now, or just completely revamp it? Now, it will be up to the commission to decide what's the best approach, but there is if I go back to the criteria, one of the criteria is minimizing voters shifted to different election years. Now, it's not a mandatory criteria. It's not something the commission has to do, but it may be something they want to do so that you have voters pretty much sticking close to the district they used to with. Of course, changes had to be made in order to make it population balanced, but to minimize that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then a comment. I have a very different perspective than the previous speaker, and I do know what students and residents, and there's a sizable resident population in Isla Vista, are like and what they're thinking about. I've been a student at UCSB, and I've lived in a bunch of different parts of the county, but for the last 31 years, I've lived in the valley. But before that, I lived in Santa Barbara. Before that, I lived in Carpinteria. And I'm quite familiar with the northern parts of the county, too. At this point in time, I have no problem being lumped with an urban district such as Isla Vista and in UCSB. I know just because of how much of the 3rd district, essentially the center part of the county, is unincorporated area. We're going to have to be sort of linked with some population base. And that's historically the base we've been linked with to balance out those numbers that we have to balance out. So thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for your comment. Hello, sir. Could you please state your name?
Hi, my name is Kelly Rose, and I wanted to revisit something that you said about District 3, which was that based on the deviation, we have to find a home for approximately 6,000 people outside of moving them from the District 3 to some other place. Is that correct? That kind of what you said?
So you can see here that District 3 we estimate that it has 95,000. And the ideal is 89,000. So the closer we can get to 89,000, the better. And so likely District 3 would have to shed some of its territory. It's
Okay.
just a matter of where it sheds.
All right. So at least my summation is somewhat accurate. Okay. Given that, when you look at District 3, in terms of registered voters, it's the second smallest. So, and then if I look down at District 1, it's the smallest by pure population. So, I mean, if one were to kind of just do pure population, the shift would have to almost be ultimately from District 3 to District 1, except that District 1 has the second highest population of voters. So I'm struggling with my mask. So I'm not sure exactly how population in and of itself is just people is a particularly decent measure for equalization when you have a situation where you have more people but fewer voter age people, and then you're trying to kind of fix a problem with area with too few people but having the highest voter registration, or voter ages. So I'm not quite sure how, given the layout of District 1 and District 5, that you ever solve the problem of moving people. Okay, that's just on the surface.
Well, I will say that the requirement is to have equal population, and that's people, period. It's not voters, and that's what the courts have decreed. And so there's no way around that. They had to be as equal, roughly equal. There is some wiggle room, like I said, and the commissioners may decide to perhaps consider where voters are, like voter numbers. So if that's something they want to do, they can, but what they must do is have districts that are equal in people. Does that help?
Well, it explains it, but all you do is exacerbate an already interesting problem, which is you have lesser voters in District 3, potential voters in District 3, and you're saying that they now move them to the area that has the largest number of voters, but there is no contiguous area there where you can pick up, you can't pick up 6,000 people and relocate them between 1 and 5. So
Yeah.
I guess you have to then start changing, 2 and
Yeah.
4 and a bunch of other areas.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you can't do a pure swap from 1 to 3, then it has to move through 2, and then 2 affects 3, and so yeah.
That's what I was trying to understand, is that it's just not a simple matter of moving
Exactly.
from one to the other.
Yes. Thank you. Would anyone else like to? Yes. And I believe you have a presentation, or did you just want to? Okay.
Yeah, so I would just ask I'm Bruce Porter. I live in San Ynez here in the 3rd District. And obviously I've lived through this as I ran for county supervisor 3 times in the last 4 elections. I would just ask the commission to look at the existing map compared to the criteria that you have. My fear is if all you do is tinker with the boundaries, you're going to miss the whole point of all this. The way it is now, the city of Santa Barbara is split between 2 districts. The city of Goleta is split between 2 districts. The city of Santa Maria is split between 2 districts. The Lompoc Valley is split between 2 districts, Lompoc in one and Vandenberg Village in the other. So currently we're violating almost all the principles you put up there on the screens. So, I mean, we're the ones that draw the maps. None of them get to draw a map. I get that. That's awesome, actually. But I would ask that you really think out of the box and don't just tinker. You know, really think about those communities of interest. I call them communities of common interest, and how you're going to glue them together so that at the end of the day, there aren't winners and losers, that everybody gets a chance, you know, their chance to vote. That's it. Oh, no, by the way, thank you. This is long and arduous process. God bless you all for what you're doing. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tracy Beard. I'm a commissioner for women for 10 years for Santa Barbara County. As a commissioner, it's been very hard to serve my community, traveling from down to District 3, Isla Vista, where it serves in District 2 physically, to Guadalupe, where you pass through 2 more districts over the span that runs 65 miles for events on the same day to serve my community. As a community advocate, my job is to listen to women throughout Santa Barbara County in District 3 and now District 5. To listen to our community, to advocate, and to be part of a community, it is very difficult to do these travel, and I find a supervisor would have just as hard of a time. Joan Hartman has done an amazing job being part of this. She's the only supervisor that is traveling at this length to service the community. If you look on the blue line, we're asking District 3 to service a much greater territory than we do anyone else. I ask you to look at how we service our community financially to making these lines. Isla Vista is a community that needs to be a part of their own. They have a student voting block. They want to be heard. They want to spend their money economically down in Goleta, in the valley area, Goleta Valley, which is part of their District 2 at this time. Ask your students where Ballard is right now. They probably, 90% of them would have no clue where our community of Ballard is within the San Ynez Valley. Our 3rd district supervisor makes many choices, how we support Isla Vista, how we support the San Ynez Valley, and how funding is done because of our community. The 3rd district always gets the short end of the funding cycle because of the territory is so large, and our service is really given to everybody at the same rate at Isla Vista to young women here in the San Ynez Valley. And how much do we take care of Guadalupe? And it is very hard at this time for our community at Guadalupe that is underserved with economic challenges, economic hardships with COVID-19. Do we give our community the correct protection within our school districts of how money is funded, of all those other things that go into districting when we look at money? I just ask you to look at that. On another end for the county, we have to have more offices to serve this community. Joan has done a great job putting offices together in the San Ynez Valley, in Solvang, now Bealton, now Guadalupe, now in Isla Vista, just to service people 1 day a week. You're asking someone to jump around, any supervisor. Is this really fair to that person? And I only speak for me as a commissioner. It is very hard to service those people. I can only imagine. My personal feelings of redistricting is closer zones would be a greater economic for this community. Please think about that, when we're thinking of communities 50 to, 60 miles away from each other. And who is serving Kiama?
Thank you. And just to clarify the record, you mentioned you're a commissioner, but you're not a commissioner for... Commissioner for women. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Would someone else like to speak? In the back, okay.
Yes, my name is Larry Bishop, and in Bealton, and I it occurs to me that if District 3 is to reduce 6,000 people, you could take it from Isla Vista, you could take it from Guadalupe, you could take it from Vandenberg Village, you know, the more distal areas of the district. But it seems if you move into Lompoc more, you're exchanging one transient population, if that's true, in Isla Vista for another transient population in Vandenberg Air Force Base. So these are people who stay in each place for a few years and then they're gone. So it does seem to be just, I don't see what that really does. But is that, so I guess it just seems that we have to knock off 6,000 people, and it seems like it would distance be a primary concern in that regard, similar to what the commissioner was saying.
Thank you for your contribution. Let's see. So you've had the chance to speak already, so I just want to make sure if anyone who hasn't spoken yet would like to speak, they have the opportunity. Is that the case? If not, then go ahead.
Okay, I'm still Kelly Rose. Back to the swapping of people around, how granular is the information that you have available in terms of, for example, I know where Vandenberg Village is, I don't know how many people live there. Goleta and the Goleta Valley, I don't know the population of how much is in Goleta, how much is in Goleta Valley, Isla Vista. So if we need to move people around, I would need a source of granular population. Is that available somewhere?
Yes. So I will be in a moment here, I'll be showing you the mapping tools. And the mapping tools have that data. And they had them at the unit of, the smallest unit they have is the census block. So the census block is, it can be compared to a street block. It often is just a street block. But this is the smallest unit of area from which the census reports data. Any smaller than that, and there's privacy concerns. So they don't do it house by house, they do it block by block. And so that's the smallest resolution we can swap. Mm-hmm.
I'm Kathy Rosenthal. I'm a resident of Solvang. So with those census blocks, they cannot be divided. They would have to have the boundary run along their boundary. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, there are very rare circumstances where we would have to divide a census block, but we would want to avoid doing that because it would, it's not as reliable data.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to speak? No. Okay. In the back there? Okay.
Hi, my name is Denise Elemine, and I'm a resident of Solvang. By looking in at everybody's faces, I'm the only one of color here. And to see redistricting, it scares the bejesus out of me because this has been done so many years prior to where they try to eliminate the brown vote, the poor vote, and then put us into small places and take us all over the place. So I'm going to start coming because I need to make sure, I'm sure that's what's going to try to happen, and I would like to know how many people of color are on the commission at this point, at this day and time.
Hi, I'm Amanda. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Hello. Amanda Ochoa. Nice to meet you.
So just one? That's it? Oh my God. Okay, so I just wanted to throw that out there. You know, you talk about redistricting and how you want to pull this person from that person, but you don't have but one person of color on your commission, and you really believe that you're going to be fair to the people of color? No, I have a problem with that.
Well, thank you for that. We just for record's sake, we used to have 3 more members of color on the commission, but they resigned to take job opportunities. They weren't forced out. They left on their own volition. But it's another thing was we were working with a pool of candidates that was selected by the county registrar, and we were not allowed to pick from outside that pool. And so that pool was overwhelmingly white, and so that was what we were drawing from. And the commission did its best to have a very as diverse of a commission as possible, but circumstances prevented that in the end. But we have made strides to have a politically diverse commission, so that there are a proportional number of Democrats, Republicans, and no party preference on the commission. So does anyone else have a comment or question before we move on?
My name is Denise Elemine, and I want to know what's the political divide? Since you said there's no color and you started off with all white, I don't know how you wanted to end up with some color there, but okay. So what's the political divide? Democrats, Republicans, and do you have that number?
Yeah, just to be clear, the initial pool was mostly white. It wasn't all white, and there were a number of people of color in that pool, most of whom did make it onto the commission, but like I said, most of them resigned later on, and so we're left with one. But as far as political composition, I believe it's 5 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and 3 no party preference. Does that sound right? Yeah, and that reflects the partisan breakdown of the county, the number of registered voters in each party in the county.
So what's the total commission amount of people?
11.
And how many are, you said 1 of color, so the 10 are white?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you want to make a point?
I was just going to say, I think you walked in after we had looked at the slide where the priorities, what we have to follow when we're drawing maps. And I think that would alleviate some of your fears. And I don't know if you want to put that slide up really fast again.
So I think you're making reference to the federal law, the Federal Voting Rights Act. So we have to follow the Federal Voting Rights Act, which means we cannot dilute the voting strength of any protected class. And a protected class, as defined by the Federal Voting Rights Act, is a group that is historically marginalized, discriminated against, disadvantaged. We want to do everything we can to protect those groups and make sure that they do not have their voting power diluted in any way. So thank you for raising that. So unless we have any questions or comments, I will now turn to the mapping tools. All right, everybody, we're going to finish up here and get back to the presentation. So I was asking for this neighbor chat portion will be about talking about communities of interest. And maybe some of you did that, maybe you were just visiting, but I am interested now to hear if anyone has anything they want to say about communities of interest that are important to them that the commission should be aware of. So if anyone would like to speak on that right now, please raise your hand and I will hand you the microphone. Any communities of interest or neighborhoods that are important to you that the commission should strive to keep together in one district?
Kathy Vreeland, I live in Buellton. I guess when I think of communities of common interest or interests come to mind, I mean, we're looking at the county, and you have your urban areas, you have your rural areas, you have your agriculture areas. So I think something was mentioned before about Isla Vista and whatnot and being in District 3. And we are a large agriculture district here in District 3. So, are the folks in Isla Vista, do they have commonalities with that, or do we have commonalities with them either? It works both ways. So I guess I think of stuff like that when I'm thinking of communities of interest throughout the district. And I think that can go, not just in this small area, but, up in Cuyama and Santa Maria, and we look at some of those areas. So I think it's just really focusing in, and I think Bruce Porter maybe mentioned a comment, but really thinking outside of the box and taking a good look at all of that when they're looking at the lines of where we're drawing these districts.
Lansing Duncan again. Just a thought, because I'm somewhat into the natural world and geography. Going forward in the future, water is going to be all important. That will be the defining resource that will drive public policy decisions. And I could say that there's certainly an argument to keeping together the watershed of the San Ynez River, because people are all so reliant upon it, and we're all going to be tied together in terms of how we connect to Kachuma and the upper and lower part of the river. So it might not be something you think about right away, but I think it is something we're going to have to think about in the future. They certainly will have a common interest in where that water comes from and where it goes and protecting it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on that issue? If not, perhaps as I go through some of the mapping tools, that might prompt some thoughts about potential communities of interest. So what I'm going to show you here is the website for drawsantabarbaracounty.org, in particular the Draw a Map tab. And clicking on that will give you access to all the tools that are at your disposal for drawing your own map and letting the commission know your thoughts about either communities of interest or districts that what the district should look like. I'm going to start at the bottom here and show you the story map, which is linked here. And in particular, I want to scroll down to the very bottom where it shows district by district. And this will show you, once it loads, what each of the current County Board of Supervisors districts looks like. And so this hearing today is focused on District 3, and you can see District 3 here in green. But if I scroll down some more, I'll show you that there is a dedicated section for District 3. And you can see the boundaries of the district as it currently stands. And you can see the cities and unincorporated communities that are found there. And there's just to also be aware of, there is the Santa Ynez Reservation of Chumash, which is just down the road. We have some zip code areas. This could be meaningful communities of interest to some people. And so each color shows a different zip code area. And you can see Lompoc Valley is pretty much just one. Buellton, Solvang, and Santa Ynez and Los Olivos have their own. So this button, if you click on that, will show you the percent of eligible voters who are Latino. And the warmer colors represent higher percentages. And you can see that there is a very heavy concentration of Latinos in the town of Guadalupe, which is right now currently in District 3. And that, when you look through the rest of the district, you don't see that sort of concentration really anywhere else. Now, if you were to look at percent who are Asian, the only real concentration of these voters would be found at UCSB, which is just barely in District 3. If you click here, you can see percent renter housing, and you can see that renters are very much concentrated in Isla Vista and UCSB, and not so much in the rest of the district. You see that we have cooler colors, which means fewer renters to be found in the valley. But you do have more in Vandenberg Air Force Base. Percent high school graduates. There's much fewer of those in the Guadalupe area as compared to the rest of the district. Percent college graduates. You see that there's a lot higher rates around UCSB. I take it because that shows graduate students who have already gotten their BA. Percent with income, $75,000 or higher. You can see there are areas in the San Ynez Valley that are slightly higher income levels as compared to Isla Vista. Percent speak Spanish at home, much higher in Guadalupe. Percent with children at home, much lower in the San Ynez Valley and in Isla Vista, where there are students. So you see that there's all sorts of different special districts that you could look at. There's the National Forest, the Space Force Base, the campus. I won't go through all these because I just want to point this out to you so that if you want to look at this on your own time, you can see. I will point out school districts. There are several school districts that span District 3. You can see that those who go to San Ynez Valley Union High School are found over here, and you have Lompoc High School and Rigetti High School. You can see elementary school attendance areas as well. So just to point this out here as something that you can look at, and that might be helpful to you as you draw your maps. But moving on to the other tools, you have the interactive map, number 5, and that looks like this. And it basically is the same data you get with the story map. You just have the opportunity to check and uncheck different layers and show multiple layers at a time as you please. So if you want to look at the lighting districts and compare that to the water districts, you have that option here. Now, I'll go to the top here and show you the paper maps. Now, you should have already seen that there are paper maps provided on the table there. Now, just be mindful that there are 2 versions of the paper map. The first version is the one with the first version is this one. It's the one with the population numbers. So these show the number of people that we estimate live in each of these population units. So you'll notice that this area only has 1 person, but this area has 12,000. So there's a lot of disparity between the number of people living in each area. But what you do with this map is you basically take it and you draw the lines as you like and manually add up the numbers with the calculator or what have you to get districts that have roughly equal amounts of people. 89,300 would be the ideal, with no more than an 8,930 difference between the largest and smallest, because there's a 10% maximum allowable deviation. So that's the simplest tool that you have at your disposal. But if you want to not have to worry about manually adding up all the numbers, you can use this version, which is the one with the ID numbers. And so instead of the numbers representing number of people or population living in each area, it is an ID number that refers to an Excel spreadsheet that's also linked on the website. And if you go to this Excel spreadsheet, you will see that the first tab just shows you the instructions. And then the second tab is where you actually put in your district assignments. So all the population units are shown here with their ID numbers, 1 to 84. And it's in this yellow column that you actually assign them to a particular district. So if you want all of these to go into District 1, you just put a 1. If you want it to go in District 5, you type in a 5. And as you do that, you can see how the numbers up here change. And as you add population units to District 5, you can see that the number here is going closer to 0, which means you're getting closer to the ideal population. And this number shows the number of people who live in the district. So as I give more units to District 5, eventually I'll get to the point where this gets really close to 0, and I'm now actually in the positive. So I'm now 3,528 over the ideal. So this will help you to draw maps using this version of the paper map, to draw maps that are population balanced while not having to worry about, oh, did I calculate everything right? Did I miss a spot? And this will make sure that as long as you fill every single one of these yellow cells, it will you will have you can see and check if you have population balanced districts. And going to the results tab will be where you see that. In this cell, if it shows up as green, that means that what you draw is population balanced. So I haven't put anything into districts 2, 3, and 4 yet, so that's why it has a large number that's red. But if you do it right, then this will show up as green and less than 10%. But right now, just looking at District 5, it's a 3.95% deviation from the ideal, so that's pretty good. If you do that for the other 4 districts, then you'll be in good shape. So that's how you use that that version of the paper map. It allows you Excel to do the math for you, and that's one option that you have available. So you would have to take the map and use it with Excel. So you have it in front of you as you put in the numbers in your Excel spreadsheet. And so you can actually draw the lines on the map as you have Excel do the calculations for you. And then or you can just do the Excel first and then draw on the map. But whatever you decide to do, that's correct. Yes. So after the paper maps, we have this tool, which is called District R. And it's the simple online map drawing tool that we have. And it's really nice because it allows you to do 2 different things. You could either draw a community or a neighborhood, or you could draw a full district plan where you draw the 5 districts. If you just wanted to show, say, where your community of interest is or your neighborhood or something like that, you would click on that red button, and it will take you to this map of Santa Barbara County. And if you were to zoom in on that, I'm just going to, for the purpose of demonstration, show you how I would do my neighborhood in Santa Barbara. So what I do is I zoom in using the plus or minus at the top left here and find where my community or neighborhood is. Then I look to the right side here and see that there's a place where I can name it. So you're encouraged to give your community a name of some sort. So I'll just say Upper State. And then you would describe this community. This is where I live and shop, or something like that. And then once you do that, then you can go up here and see that there are 4 icons. The first icon is just the pan. and that's just to move around like this. But the second icon is where you really get going, and that is the paintbrush tool. So you can see that as I move my cursor across the map, it's highlighting census blocks that will be painted in once I click my mouse. So as it stands now, the brush size is 20. If you want it to be larger, you can move it up to the right, and you can see now it's covering more area as you move across. But if you want it to be more finely tuned, you can move it to something like 7, and it just gets a few. So once you figure out how big you want your brush size to be, then you can click and drag to fill in the census blocks that you think represent your community or your neighborhood or whatever you want to be depicting. So that is how I would do it. Now, notice here that I made a mistake. I colored in that census block above Foothill when I didn't want to. So then I go to the erase tool up here, and all I had to do is click where I made my mistake, and it will take it away. So it's very simple and easy to use. If you want to do the inspect tool, you can look and see how many people live in each block as you go around. But you can look at other demographics as well. So going back to the paint tool, the nice thing about this tool is you can actually draw overlapping neighborhoods or communities. So if you click the plus icon here, you can see that there's now another community, one in yellow, that I'm going to draw. And so maybe I just want to do something really bigger, just Santa Barbara as a whole. In which case I could make my brush size really big, and I would draw everything that I think is Santa Barbara. And notice here that I've drawn it so that it overlaps my original neighborhood. So that's the nice thing about this community tool, is it enables you to draw overlapping communities or neighborhoods if that's what you want to do. So another thing to keep in mind is that there are different tabs down here. The one that I've been using is the drawing tab, but there's also the data layers tab, which can show you different demographics that you might be interested in, such as children at home or Spanish spoken at home. So you see which areas have more Spanish speakers, and you can explore it that way. And you can evaluate and see how many people ended up in your community, either the first one I did or the second one. And finally, once you're ready to submit your plan, all you have to do is click Save. And you would have the option of either sharing it now with anyone who might go onto the District R website for Santa Barbara County, or save it as a draft or a work in progress. And if you give it a team or plan name, that would enable us to know who was submitting it, and for it to show up to people as being associated with you or your group. If I go back to the District R website for the county, there is the purple button that you can click on that will actually allow you to draw a full 5-district plan. And so it really is the same process where you use the paintbrush tool and use the eraser tool if necessary. But what really makes this stand out is it shows you the population balance as a chart. So as you add census blocks to your district, it will show you how many people are filling it up. So if I were to just randomly draw somewhere around here, you can see that that area has 20,000 people in it. So this line shows where I want to get to. The ideal is close to 89,300. So I need to add more people. So perhaps I could go over to Lompoc and select that area. And now you see I'm at 75,220. So closer, but still not quite enough to be equal population. So if I were to add some more, I'll get Los Alamos, I'll get the rest of Point Conception. And so that's getting closer to that ideal. So I'll leave it there just for the purposes of demonstration. And so what you would want to do probably is to lock already drawn districts so that when you draw your next district, you don't color over something that you already colored. So if you check that box, then you can select the yellow color, which will be another district that you draw. And so as you color that, it will make sure that you don't fill in anything you've filled in already. And you can see it's a big area, but if you look down here, that's only 475 people. So I need to find a lot more people to put into that district. So I use the pan and go up here. And likely Santa Maria is going to be where I find that that population. So I'll go over there and see if I can get, and you can see that this bar is getting much closer to that line. And actually, it's now way over. So I'd had to go to the eraser tool and find some areas to take out. And so now that gets much closer to the ideal. If you go to this part, you can highlight unassigned units. And the nice thing about that is it will show you in red what areas that you missed when you were drawing your district. And you can fill those in and make sure that you don't have those holes in your plan. So you would do this for all 5 districts, selecting a new color each time you want to draw a new district. But the procedure is the same with the paintbrush and the eraser, and you have the same data layers available to you, and then you would save it the same way that you saved your community of interest. So District R is really, I think it's really easy to use, and people really seem to like it, and it has the benefit of it's block by block, so it's the finest resolution that you can get, and it's very powerful. But if you want even more power, there's the caliper redistricting tool. That's a very good question. So just for the sake of the recording, the question was, if you do a District R plan and later on decide that you want to modify it, do you have the option to do that? And the answer is yes. So you can see here, everything that's submitted shows up on the public gallery. And you can go there and use anything that is there as a template for your own plan. And so if one of these was an earlier draft, then I could take that and make a new draft. And you could put something in the description saying this is a later draft of an earlier draft I did. So if I were to click on this plan that was already submitted by someone, and you can see that person was very diligent about drawing population balanced districts. You can see their total maximum deviation is less than 1%, which is really close to the ideal. It doesn't have to be that close. Like I said, if you're under 10%, that's good. But So say you wanted to use this as your template. You would basically just go and modify it as you see fit. So let's say I wanted all the Channel Islands to be in one district. I would click the blue and make it like that. And then I would save it as my own plan. So if this was, you could be doing this to an earlier draft and deciding that you wanted to make a change. But you're always welcome to send an email to redistricting at countyofsb.org saying, I submitted 2 district R maps, but I only want you to look at this one because that's the one that that is my revised draft. Does that answer your question? No. Yes, you can submit multiple maps. Yes, that is what I was just doing. I didn't draw that map. Someone else drew that map, and I was modifying it. Yes, because it will preserve their original. You won't be affecting what they originally drew. It will just come as a new plan that is yours. Yes. Mm-hmm. So lastly is that that caliper tool. And if you click on that, it will take you to this this page where you can create a user login. And I've already created one, so I'm going to log in using that. So I might have to create a new user. And so if you were to create a new user, you would come up with a username, a password. You would confirm that password, give yourself an email address so that we can contact you if we have any adjustments or tweaks that we want to ask about you making. And then you would create the user. And so that sends a link to your email that you can then use to, and you see it comes from redistricting. So you click that to activate your Maptitude Online redistricting account. And you put in your username, your password, and you log in. And so when you're using this website, you have the option of creating a new plan or opening one that you've already started. So since I haven't created a plan before, a new plan is my only option. And when you click on that, you have another 2 options. Your first option is to create a blank map, which means it's totally starting from scratch. You have nothing in there that's in there already. Or you could use the existing districts as a template. So if I click on that option and click create, you would name the plan. I'll call it Daniel Demo and click OK. And that will take you to this map. And what it will show you is the 5 districts as they currently exist. And you can see that, like I've said before, District 3 is overpopulated by close to 7%. District 1 is underpopulated. So if I were to want to try to balance these out, let's say just for demonstration's sake, I were to want to add people to District 1 from District 3. I would make the target district, so the one that I will be moving people into, as District 1. And I'll make this, and notice how it turns into green, which means it's the target. And then I make the source as District 3. This is where the people are coming from. Then you can select either a block group, a tract, or the whole county. But let's just do block by block. Now, to do this, you could use either the cursor tool where you just click on one block at a time, but that can be pretty tedious. So if you want to do more than that, you can click on this tool, which actually draws a shape. So you can click in several places to draw a shape that will be selected. And once you finish your shape, you double click and you'll see that it has selected all of this area that was in my shape. Now down here you'll see pending changes. You'll see the original population and the change that has been made. So if you look here, you'll see that I'm taking 5,000 people from District 3 and moving them into District 1, which is close to what the deviation is. So once I feel like I've got a good number, then I click the check mark. And you can see that now District 1 has a deviation of 0.33%. District 3 has a deviation of 0.78%. So they're much more balanced now. Of course, the consequence of that is I've split Santa Ynez Valley. So that might be not ideal. So, but it's just for demonstration's sake. Just so you can see how it works and how you can create districts that are population balanced. Now, before you submit this plan, let's just say I like this plan, I'm ready to submit it. You should go to the Plan Integrity tab and first click Find Unassigned Areas. And it says there are no unassigned areas. So those are areas that haven't been assigned to any districts. So that's good. But then click Find Non-Contiguous Districts. And you can see here that there are some non-contiguous districts. The downside here is that it shows the islands as non-contiguous. And so you'll have to be mindful of the fact that the first several areas shown here are actually fine. They're just part of the Channel Islands, and so they had to be connected to one of the mainland districts. But you'll see that in District 3, I have the main area, which is the vast majority of the area, but then there's this second area down here. And if I double click there, you can see that there's a little area that I forgot or neglected to include in my switch. So I need to select that and make it so that that little piece of District 3 now becomes part of District 1. And then I click the check mark and I should be good. Oh no, not quite. I double click there and there's still a little sliver. And if I check that, then I'm good. Now it's just the islands. So that is how you make sure that you draw districts that are compact, are contiguous, and you can pan around and inspect to see what your district looks like. And once you're ready to submit your plan, then you just click Submit Plan up here to the top right. And you will be asked to provide a narrative description of your plan, just so we can have an idea of why you drew the map as you drew it, and so we can get a sense of what your motivations were, and adding your contact info in case we need to get a hold of you to ask you questions about your mapping plan. So that about sums it up. We have all these tools available at your disposal, and whatever one you're most comfortable with, we encourage you to use. But we have tools for everyone's, hopefully everyone's skill level and interest level. So I'm just going to ask if there are any questions about any of the tools that I've shown so far.
I would say there's probably going to be a pretty steep learning curve. You know, you obviously know how to use this tool, but for those of us who are starting from scratch, who can we call, talk to in order to make sure that we get to the point of actually having something that we could submit?
Yes, so if you want us to help you out, then you have the option of sending an email to redistricting at countyofsb.org, and then we could help answer your question that way. But we also encourage you to, if you want to get started now and draw a map and ask us while we're here, we're happy to answer your questions at this forum. But if you want to wait and try it at home first, then you can always contact us at that email address, and we can hopefully answer your question. Mm-hmm.
One thing, sir, I was able to start playing around with some of these, and it might look intimidating right now, but once you get into the software, and you kind of figure out, okay, this button does this and this button does that, it really becomes really intuitive. And so don't be intimidated by it at all. It actually is pretty user friendly.
Yes.
Is the online help good then?
I didn't need any. I took a couple minutes and messed around and got the hang of it, and it sort of started making sense, and then you start just going into it, and it sort of just happens. So don't be intimidated by it. Just give it a couple good old-fashioned tries and trial and error, and you'll figure it out.
And I was just about to point that out. Right here, there's a tutorial video for District R, and there's also one for a Caliper's MOR tool. And so you can click on that, and it'll take you to a YouTube video that will walk you through it. So you can pause it as you need to and play it again, so you can really get that help through there. And there's also a quick start guide that Caliper offers for their MOR tool. So there's a lot of resources we have available to help you figure these tools out.
Two questions. Number one, what is the final submission date that we have? And number two, once you've received all of the suggested maps, do you have a process or a procedure that you've developed how you're going to select them?
Yes. So to answer your first question first, the deadline to submit initial draft maps is October 18th at 6 o'clock. So this will be, there will be one more meeting on October 6th for us to come together and talk about the census data and what the maps might look like. But October 18th will be the deadline for the public to submit initial draft maps that will then be considered at the post-draft map public hearings. So to answer your second question, every map that we receive will be presented to the commission. So no matter what format it comes in, paper map, District R, Caliper, it will be presented to the commission in a standardized format. So every map will be shown. We don't weed out any maps. We may flag a map as being population imbalanced or not adhering to the Voting Rights Act or something like that, but we'll still show it. And so if you submit a map, it will show up and the commission will have the chance to consider it. And so it will be during these November meetings that they'll be considering these maps. And then eventually they'll be identifying a preferred map and adopting it on the 8th of December before the deadline of the 15th.
Then the steps in consideration are?
Say that again?
The steps that you consider, what are they?
Well,
or the sequence of how you would analyze the maps you're going to suggest finally.
So we present every map to the commission. Then we might recommend to them some maps that we feel satisfy the criteria the best, but they will also have the opportunity to determine that and say, I really like this map. But the goal will be to kind of whittle it down so that we get to like a group of maybe 5 or so maps that are really kind of people's favorites, the consensus choice among the commission. And then during the last meeting, they choose among those 5 one map to adopt. Does that help?
It does, thank you.
Yeah. All right, let's see.
I wanted to know the final map, will it come along with the person's name who submitted it? When you guys make your decisions, will you know the person, the underlying person who made the map? Will you say, this is John White's submission, this is my cousin Larry's submission? Do you know these names when you're looking into picking the final ones?
We will know who submits it, but we will present it to the commission with a just a number, like number 3 or number 18 or something like that, so that it's not it doesn't really get too personal. It's not about who submitted it, it's about what the map looks like and whether it looks good to the commission.
Okay, I'm confused. You said we will know who submitted it, so is that the commission will know?
Yeah, we being us demographers. So we demographers take the maps and we see the names that are attached to them. And then we present the maps to the commissioners with the ID numbers.
Just an no name or anything like that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, right now you're working with estimated numbers. If you draw a map now and submit it, does it when you get the final numbers, will it automatically repopulate? Or do we hold off submitting until we see it? And is there a process, will it automatically repopulate with the revised numbers?
Very good question. So we've made sure that our partners who make these online tools set them up so that once the official census data comes in, they will automatically be regenerated into the tools, the District R and the MOR. And so the hope is that our population estimates will be very close to the official data, and so you may need to make minor tweaks to make it population balanced, if any at all. So, but the nice thing is you won't have to redo it. You won't have to start over from scratch because the new data is in. It will take the data and put it in there for you. You just might have to, if you want it to be population balanced and it's not quite, make some minor adjustments. Does that help answer your question? Okay.
On these paper map documents, you have these blocks and they're called population units with ID numbers, but these are not the census blocks. These are not the grains that you'd be drawing the actual map with.
Yes, so if you take one of these maps, you'll see that it is broken up into population units. So these are not individual census blocks because they're so small they would clutter up the map and you wouldn't be able to make any sense of it. And so we came up with these population units that are collections of census blocks that we think make sense and are reasonable groupings. But if you don't like the way we came up with these population units, when you use the online tools, they are not by these population units. They're individual census blocks that you select one by one.
But this says use this with the Microsoft Excel kit. So
yes, if you take the version that has the ID numbers, they don't show population numbers. They show ID numbers because you would use the Excel spreadsheet, which does have the population data in it, and just assign these areas by putting in their ID numbers.
okay. So it's actually working with a different layout to begin with, but you could divide those further into the census blocks.
Yeah, so if you want it more finely grained by census blocks, we recommend you use the online tools. But if you want to use the paper tools, you can make some sort of line saying, like, I want the line here, and then we could make our best judgment based on where we know the census blocks and break it up for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Commissioner Bray?
Daniel, I'm just curious, has a decision been made by the authorities, whoever makes this decision, regarding the federal Lompoc prison population? Will that be attributed to the area, or would that inmate population be attributed to the home of record addresses of the inmates?
Yeah. We're still waiting on word from the California statewide database about what they're going to do with the federal prisoner populations. We know with state what they're going to do is they're going to reallocate them to their last known residential address and zero out the state prison. But as far as the federal prison, they haven't stated that. We assume they're going to zero it out. So it would show up on our data as 0, and it wouldn't factor into the population counts. But we can't say that for sure at this point. Yeah. Did you have a question?
I thought that the state commission last week said something about they were not going to allocate the federal prisoners. That's something I heard from League of Women Voters.
Okay, I hadn't heard that, but I can check with my colleagues to see about that. But hopefully that's not the case. We'll see. Yeah.
It surprised me, but that's
yeah.
what I heard.
Okay.
They were not going to allocate the federal.
To the local population?
No, they were not going to spread them out because they aren't doing it nationally.
Oh. Okay.
And so they could only, this is what I heard of the logic.
Yeah.
They could only allocate the federal.
I just want to make sure that's picked up by the recording.
What I had heard was that they could only allocate federal prisoners who were from California. They could potentially, and then that became kind of a nightmare because if you allocate them to another state where they were from, being it's a federal penitentiary, the other state wasn't taking them because the feds weren't allocating it that way. So that was the logic of what I understood to be. But this is something I heard second or third hand, and it was something the League of Women Voters had put out, that the federal prisoners were not being reallocated. So.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Once we,
Again,
once
not
we,
sure it's right.
once we get a definitive answer, we'll make sure that we let the commission know. And if that is the case, then the federal prison will have to be accounted for in the population counts. And
Are they accounted for in the current, these estimated numbers?
I believe so, but yeah, I think they are. Yes. Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah. So that will definitely be something to be mindful of. Okay, anyone else?
Just a quick comment. You can imagine what this would have looked like 10 years ago without these electronic tools. And you know, this is a big experiment doing citizen-based redistricting. This is new. There are only 2 counties in California that are doing this, San Bernardino and Santa Barbara. So we can't emphasize enough how important it is for you to draw these maps. We need maps. We can't do our job without your maps. So even if it looks intimidating, plunge in and go for it. And even if you take an old road map and draw lines, do that and start there and then work your way toward an electronic tool if you feel more comfortable doing that. But we hope you'll submit your maps because we can't do our job without them. Also, you'll notice that the electronic tools have places to put descriptions and notes. Those notes are going to be very important later. There's going to be a big crunch time after we get our census data, and the process for weeding through all of these maps is going to have to happen fairly quickly. So the notes are going to help us as a commission get those decisions made that are not going to be easy decisions. So put notes and comments in there. I think that's going to help us all quite a bit.
Thank you.
What is going to be the decision process once you get all the maps of how you're going to pick your map? I mean, it's just going to be a vote of the commission?
Yeah, so the commission has this criteria in front of them, and they're going to follow that criteria to the best of their judgment, and they're going to decide amongst themselves which maps best satisfy the criteria. And if they all agree on one, then great, then they'll vote unanimously to adopt one, but more likely there'll be some difference of opinion, and then there'll be, I believe, 7 votes are required in order to pass a plan. So 7 out
How
of
many?
11.
7 out of?
11.
11?
Yes.
And is there a chance for public comment so we'll get so many maps and we pick 5? Is there a public comment after that point? I mean, how can people still participate?
Yeah, there'll be public comment at every single hearing, at every single post-draft map hearing. And so people will have the opportunity to weigh in and say, choose this map. This is the one that satisfies the criteria the best. Yeah.
I think that's part of the question. It's like, what happens after those few maps are picked? Oops. Yeah, how can you comment after that when you see those few? You still have to comment. You still have to follow, look at the calendar and participate after that point too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we're just about ready to wrap up, unless there's any other questions or comments. I just want to point out a couple things before we wrap this up. So the first thing is just to visit the website if you have any questions or want to access the tools or want to get in contact with us, and you see the means here to do that. And then a reminder of when the upcoming meetings are. So the next one will be October 6th, and that'll be your last chance to talk about what the district maps might look like before you actually see maps presented. And that will be November 3rd. So once November comes, then the commission will have maps in front of them, and they'll be, like I said, presented with all of them, but then they'll be talking amongst themselves which ones they want to advance to the next round of kind of like 5 or however many they want to consider for the final round to choose among them one final map. So please visit the website, and thank you for your attention and your participation, and have a great rest of your day.